The night was warm, and the city of Lagos sparkled with lights that reflected off the polished cars parked outside an exclusive rooftop bar. Inside, laughter echoed among men who had never known struggle. They were billionaires, young, powerful, and bored. At the center of the table sat Lucas Moretti, the golden boy of business. Every deal he touched turned into gold. He wore a black suit that cost more than most people's yearly salary, and confidence rolled off him like perfume. Around him were his two closest friends, Ricardo and Felix, men who, like him, had everything except humility. Ricardo raised his glass. "Lucas, admit it, you've never met a woman who could resist you." Lucas chuckled, leaning back. "Why would they? I'm everything they want." Felix smirked, spinning his whiskey glass. "Then let's make things interesting. A real challenge." Lucas's eyes gleamed. "I'm listening." Felix pointed through the window at the busy street below, where people were walking home after long hours of work. "Down there's a world you know nothing about. How about you try finding love there?" Ricardo laughed. "Better yet, marry someone from that world, someone who doesn't even fit your lifestyle. Let's see how long you last." Lucas frowned. "You mean like a poor woman?" "Not just poor," Felix added with a smirk. "Someone you'd never choose. Simple, modest, maybe a little overweight. Let's see if your charm still works when money isn't enough." The table erupted in laughter, except for Lucas, whose pride had just been challenged. He hated losing, especially to Felix. "Fine," he said finally, his tone sharp. "I'll do it." Ricardo raised an eyebrow. "You're serious?" "Completely. I'll find her, win her heart, and marry her. 6 months, that's all I need." Felix grinned wickedly. "If you pull that off, I'll give you my new Ferrari. Deal?" Lucas extended his hand. "Deal." Their hands met in a firm shake, sealing a bet that would soon destroy and rebuild a man's heart. The laughter returned, but this time it echoed differently, like thunder before a storm. Outside, the wind carried the sound of distant music and traffic, blending into the city's restless pulse. Lucas finished his drink and stood. "I'll start tomorrow," he said confidently. Felix grinned. "You'll regret this." "Maybe, but I never lose." As he walked towards the glass doors, the city lights reflected on his face, half in shadow, half in gold. He didn't know it yet, but that night's foolish bet would soon cost him his pride, his peace, and eventually, his heart. The next morning, the sun rose over Lagos like a golden promise. Lucas's phone buzzed non-stop, business calls, emails, meetings, but for once, he didn't care. His mind was still on the bet. It sounded stupid now that he was sober, yet his pride wouldn't let him back down. He sat in his sleek black Bentley, watching the city come alive. Street vendors shouted prices, motorbikes zoomed past, and children laughed on their way to school. It was a world far from his own, messy, loud, but full of life. Then as he stopped near a small corner restaurant, something caught his eye. A woman. She stood behind a food counter, her hair tied back in a colorful scarf, wearing a simple red apron. She wasn't thin or glamorous. Her body was soft and full. Her hands moved quickly as she served steaming plates of rice and fried plantains. Her smile, gentle, almost shy, seemed to brighten even the tired faces of her customers. Lucas leaned forward, curious. There was something peaceful about her presence. She didn't notice the luxury car parked across the street. She didn't care who was watching. She was just real. He parked and stepped out. The sound of his polished shoes hitting the dusty ground drew a few glances. Heads turned. A man like him didn't belong there. But he ignored them and crossed the street. Inside, the air was thick with the smell of pepper soup and fried meat. Lucas walked to the counter and smiled. "Good afternoon." The woman looked up, slightly startled. "Good afternoon, sir. What would you like?" "Whatever you recommend, as long as it comes with your smile." She blinked, unimpressed. "Then I guess you'll be eating without one," she replied calmly, and turned back to serve another customer. Lucas's jaw dropped. He wasn't used to rejection, especially not from someone who didn't even know who he was. But instead of walking away, he laughed quietly. "All right then, I'll take rice and plantain, please." She nodded. "You can sit over there. I'll bring it." He watched her move, confident, kind, and focused. There was no pretending, no performance. For the first time in his life, Lucas felt invisible. And strangely, it didn't bother him. When she finally brought his food, he tried again. "You must be the owner here." "No," she simply said. "I just help my aunt. My name's Anna." "Anna," he repeated softly. "That's a beautiful name."
Name. She gave a polite smile and walked away before he could say more. As Lucas ate, he realized something. He had been around models, actresses, women who wore diamonds and smiled for attention, yet none of them had made his heart race the way Anna just did. When he finished, he left a large tip on the table. Anna saw it and called out, "Sir, you left too much." He turned, smiling. "Consider it a thank you for the best meal I've had in years." That night, as he sat in his penthouse, surrounded by silence and glass walls, Lucas replayed her face in his mind. He had made a bet, but something told him this woman, this simple, humble woman, might be the one thing money could never buy. For the next 3 days, Lucas couldn't stop thinking about Anna. Her calm voice, her honesty, the way she didn't seem impressed by anything about him. It bothered him, but in a strange, exciting way. He'd met countless women before. Some chased his money, others chased his name. But Anna, she didn't seem to chase anything. She just worked, smiled at strangers, and went home quietly. That simplicity haunted him. On the 4th day, Lucas found himself driving toward the same corner again. He told himself it was just to grab lunch, but deep down, he knew it wasn't about the food. When he entered the restaurant, Anna was wiping a table near the window. She looked up, surprised. "You? Again?" Lucas grinned. "Is that a bad thing?" "Depends," she said, placing her cloth aside. "Most people don't eat the same thing 5 days in a row." He chuckled. "Maybe I'm not here for the food." Anna raised an eyebrow. "Then I guess you're lost." Lucas laughed. "Maybe I am." She sighed, shaking her head, but couldn't hide a tiny smile. "What do you want, Mr. Lucas?" he said quickly. "Just Lucas." "Well, Lucas, some of us have work to do." He leaned on the counter playfully. "Then let me make it easier. Dinner, 1 hour, my treat." Anna crossed her arms. "No." "No?" he repeated, genuinely shocked. "I don't go out with strangers, especially the kind who think they can buy a yes." Her words hit him harder than he expected. He wasn't angry. He was impressed. Most women would have said yes without hesitation, but she stood firm, strong in her self-respect. Lucas smiled faintly. "All right then. I'll earn that yes." Anna rolled her eyes. "Good luck with that." He left that afternoon with something new burning inside him. Not pride, not challenge, but curiosity. That night, as he sat alone in his mansion, the silence felt heavier than usual. The walls echoed his thoughts. Why can't I stop thinking about her? He picked up his phone, typed her name into his contacts, and hesitated. He didn't even have her number. "Tomorrow," he whispered to himself. "Tomorrow I'll try again." The next morning, Lucas returned. And again, and again. He bought lunch for workers, helped carry trays, and even swept the floor once just to make Anna laugh. Little by little, her coldness began to melt. One afternoon, as she served him, she said softly, "You're different this week. What changed?" Lucas smiled gently.
Maybe I met someone who made me want to be better. Anna froze, looking at him quietly for a moment. Then, with a calm voice, she said, "Be better for yourself, not for me." Her words pierced straight through his chest. As he left that day, Lucas realized something terrifying. He wasn't playing the game anymore. The bet that once felt exciting now felt wrong. Because for the first time in his life, the man who thought he could buy love was starting to feel it for real. Days turned into weeks, and Lucas became a regular at the small restaurant. Everyone there knew his face now. The rich man who dressed too well for such a place, but never acted like he was above anyone. He'd sit by the window every afternoon, eating whatever Anna served him, even if it was just rice and beans. He never complained. He just watched her. The way she moved. The way she laughed when her aunt cracked a joke. The way her eyes softened when she spoke kindly to customers. One afternoon, Anna came to his table and crossed her arms. "You really don't get tired of this food, do you?" Lucas smiled. "Only if waiting for you to sit down and eat with me." She shook her head, amused. "You're persistent, I'll give you that." "I like challenges," he said. "Then maybe you should find one that doesn't involve bothering people at work," she teased, walking away. But Lucas noticed something new. The teasing wasn't cold anymore. It carried warmth, maybe even curiosity. Later that evening, as she was closing the restaurant, Lucas offered to help her stack the chairs. She tried to refuse, but he insisted. As they worked side by side, Anna finally asked, "Why do you keep coming here? You could eat anywhere." Lucas hesitated, searching for words. He couldn't tell her the truth, not about the bet. So he said softly, "Because here, things feel real." Anna looked at him for a long moment, then smiled faintly. "You're different."
Strange, Lucas. I'll take that as a compliment. The next day he showed up again, not in a designer suit, but in jeans and a plain white shirt. He carried a small box. Inside was a simple bracelet made of wooden beads. He handed it to her, nervous for the first time in years. "It reminded me of you," he said. "Beautiful but simple." Anna looked down at it, unsure what to say. "I don't usually accept gifts." "I know," he replied softly, "but this one doesn't come with a price." Her fingers brushed against his when she took it. For a second, their eyes met, and time seemed to slow. That night, when Anna got home, she placed the bracelet on her nightstand and stared at it for a long time. She didn't know why her heart was beating faster. As for Lucas, he sat in his car outside her street for almost an hour before driving home. The lights of the city blurred in his vision, but his thoughts were clear. He was supposed to be playing a game, but every time he saw her, it felt less like a bet and more like fate. The next day, Ricardo called him. "So, how's your little project going?" he asked, laughing. Lucas hesitated. "It's going," he said shortly. Ricardo laughed louder. "Don't tell me you're catching feelings, Lucas." Lucas forced a chuckle, but inside, something twisted. He couldn't deny it anymore. Somewhere between the lies and the laughter, something inside him had shifted. And for the first time since that night at the rooftop bar, the man who had everything began to feel afraid of losing the one thing he didn't yet have: her heart. Weeks passed, and the line between truth and pretense began to blur. What had started as a joke now felt dangerously real. Lucas found himself rearranging his schedule just to stop by the restaurant, sometimes just to see Anna smile for a few seconds. His friends mocked him in their group chat. "Still wasting time with that girl?" Ricardo wrote. Lucas read the message but didn't reply. For the first time, he didn't have anything clever to say. Instead of fine dining and champagne, he now preferred the smell of fried plantains and laughter from strangers who didn't care how rich he was. Every time he stepped into that little restaurant, the world outside seemed to disappear. One Friday afternoon, Anna finished her shift and was surprised to see Lucas waiting outside. "You're still here?" she asked, slightly smiling. "I was hoping to walk you home. I live far. I don't mind." After a moment of hesitation, she nodded. They walked side by side through the crowded streets. Vendors shouted, children ran past them, and the golden sun painted everything in warm tones. "So, tell me, why does a man like you keep coming to a place like mine?" Lucas smiled softly. "Because that's where you are." Anna rolled her eyes, but she blushed slightly. "You're impossible." They reached her small apartment building. Lucas looked up at the worn bricks, the dim lights. "This is where you live?" "Yes," she said simply. "It's not much, but it's home." He smiled. "Then it's perfect." She looked curiously at him. "You really don't act like other rich men." "Maybe that's because I'm tired of pretending," he said almost to himself. For a few seconds, neither spoke. Then Anna said softly, "You know, Lucas, I used to think men like you didn't notice women like me." He turned to her. "Then maybe you were wrong." Their eyes met, and something shifted in the air, a connection too pure to be explained. She smiled faintly. "Good night, Lucas." "Good night, Anna." He didn't sleep that night. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw her smile. Her laughter echoed in his head. Her voice lingered in his heart. The next morning, he canceled a business meeting, something he had never done before. He spent the day helping Anna's aunt fix a broken sign at the restaurant. Customers stared in disbelief. The billionaire who once closed multi-million-dollar deals was now holding a hammer and laughing over spilled paint. When Anna walked in, her jaw dropped. "You're helping?" He smiled. "I told you I like challenges." But this time he wasn't talking about the bet. He was talking about her, about love, about redemption. Later that night, as the lights of Lagos glimmered outside his window, Lucas whispered to himself, "This isn't a game anymore." And deep in his heart, he knew. He wasn't just fighting for pride now, he was fighting for something far more dangerous. The truth. The city was alive that night. Music spilling from distant bars, laughter echoing from the streets, and a soft breeze carrying the scent of rain. Lucas waited outside the small restaurant, leaning against his car with a nervous energy he hadn't felt in years. When Anna stepped out, her apron folded neatly in her arms, she looked tired but radiant under the streetlights. "You're still here?" she asked, slightly smiling. "I was hoping to get dinner somewhere quiet. No fancy places, I promise." Anna hesitated
For a moment, then nodded. "All right, but only if I get to pick the place." They ended up in a small park by the waterfront. Street vendors sold roasted corn, couples sat on benches, and children played by the water's edge. It was simple. Nothing like Lucas's world of glittering chandeliers and designer suits, yet he felt more at peace than he had in years. As they ate, Anna laughed at one of his clumsy jokes. "You're not very good at being funny," she teased. "Good," he replied, grinning. "At least you're laughing for the right reasons." For a long moment, they sat in comfortable silence, watching the city lights shimmer on the water. Then Anna spoke softly. "You know, Lucas, I didn't expect to like you." He turned to her, curious. "Why not?" "Because men like you usually want something, and when they get it, they leave." Her words cut deep. He looked at her, struggling to breathe. "What if I don't want to leave?" Anna's eyes met his, cautious yet vulnerable. "Then maybe you're different." The world seemed to stop around them. Without thinking, Lucas reached out and gently took her hand. She didn't pull away. For a man who had bought everything he ever wanted, that single touch felt like the richest thing in the world. He wanted to tell her everything, about the bet, about how it all started as a cruel game, but when he saw the trust in her eyes, the words froze in his throat. Instead, he whispered, "I've never met anyone like you, Anna." She smiled shyly. "That's because you've been looking in the wrong places." They sat there until the night turned quiet and the wind carried the soft sound of waves. Before parting, Anna looked at him and said, "Thank you, Lucas, for seeing me." That sentence stayed with him the whole night. For seeing me. He had looked at thousands of faces, attended hundreds of parties, been surrounded by crowds his entire life, but no one had ever seen him either. When he got home, he stood by the window, staring at the reflection of the city lights in the glass. His chest ached, not from guilt alone, but from something stronger: love. And though he didn't know it yet, that love would soon be tested in ways he couldn't imagine. Because every lie, no matter how deeply buried, eventually finds its way to the surface. Lucas had never been happier. Every morning felt new, every day brighter. He wasn't chasing profits anymore, he was chasing peace, and somehow Anna had become the source of it. They spent weekends together, sometimes cooking in her small kitchen, sometimes walking through street markets, laughing like they had known each other forever. Anna made him forget the noise of his world. Around her, he didn't need to be the billionaire. He could just be Lucas. But happiness, as it often does, attracted shadows. One evening, Lucas's phone buzzed with a message from Ricardo. "We need to talk. It's urgent." Lucas frowned. He hadn't seen Ricardo or Felix in weeks. He almost ignored the text, but finally agreed to meet. When he arrived at the private club where they used to gather, Ricardo was already there, drink in hand, grin sharp as ever. "So, the great Lucas Moretti. Looks like you've disappeared into the world of street food." Lucas's jaw tightened. "I'm not here for jokes." Ricardo leaned back. "Then let's talk about your bet." Lucas froze. "It's over." "Over?" Ricardo laughed bitterly. "You were supposed to marry her, remember? 6 months. That was the deal. Now you're out here acting like she's your soulmate." "I don't care about the deal anymore," Lucas said coldly. "I care about her." Ricardo slammed his glass on the table. "You're losing your mind, Lucas. She's a nobody. You were supposed to win a car, not lose your dignity." Lucas stood up. His voice was calm, but his eyes were blazing. "Then keep your Ferrari, Ricardo. I've already won something worth more." He turned and walked out, leaving Ricardo speechless. But pride and jealousy are dangerous things. The next morning, Ricardo sat in his car outside Anna's restaurant, staring through the windshield. He watched her serving customers, smiling, completely unaware that the man she loved had built their story on a lie. He clenched his jaw. "Let's see how real your fairy tale is," he muttered. That evening, when the restaurant was almost empty, he walked inside. Anna looked up, confused. "Can I help you?" Ricardo smiled coldly. "Oh, you don't know who I am, do you? I'm Lucas's friend. Or at least, I used to be." She frowned. "What do you mean?" He stepped closer. "Tell me something, Anna. Did he ever mention a bet?" Her eyes narrowed. "What are you talking about?" Ricardo's voice dropped to a cruel whisper. 6 months ago, your precious Lucas made a deal to marry a poor, ordinary woman like you just to prove he could. You were never love, sweetheart. You were a game." Then he turned and left, leaving behind a silence that felt heavier than truth itself. Anna stood frozen behind the counter. Her heart pounded painfully in her chest. Everything, every word, every smile, every moment began to crumble in her mind. And outside, rain started to fall. The kind of rain that doesn't cool the air, it only makes the pain sink deeper. The storm that night seemed endless. Thunder rolled above the city like an angry warning, and every flash of lightning reminded Anna of Ricardo's words. A bet. Her hands trembled as she locked the restaurant door. She wanted to believe it wasn't true, that Lucas couldn't do something so cruel, but the seed of doubt had already taken root in her heart. When morning came, she didn't sleep.
She didn't eat. She just waited. And right on time, Lucas arrived, smiling, holding a bouquet of white lilies. "Good morning," he said warmly. "I thought, was I a bet?" The words came out cold, sharp, cutting through his smile like glass. Lucas froze. "Anna, what are you talking about?" Her eyes filled with tears, but her voice stayed steady. "Was I a bet?" He opened his mouth, but no sound came out. He looked at her, the woman who had taught him how to feel again, and realized he had run out of excuses. "Yes," he finally whispered, "but Anna, please, it's not what you think." She stepped back, shaking her head. "Not what I think? You lied to me, Lucas. Every word, every moment, was it all just a game to you?" "No! It started that way, yes, but it changed." "Changed?" she interrupted, her voice cracking. "You humiliated me. You played with my heart." Tears fell freely now, mixing with the rain that had started again outside. "Do you have any idea how hard it was for me to trust you? And you turned it into a joke." Lucas reached for her hand, desperate. "Anna, please listen. I swear to you, I love you. I never meant to hurt you." She pulled away violently. "Love?" she said bitterly. "You don't love me. You love yourself. This was all about proving you could win." Her words hit harder than any slap. Lucas felt something inside him shatter. "Anna, please," he said softly, his voice trembling. "You changed me. I can't lose you." But she stepped back again, her eyes filled with pain. "You already did." And before he could say another word, she turned and walked away into the rain. Lucas stood there, watching her disappear. His world, the one built on arrogance and pride, fell apart completely in that moment. That night, his mansion felt colder than ever. The lights glared against empty walls, mocking him. He poured a drink, then another, but the burn of alcohol couldn't drown the echo of his words. "You don't love me." He smashed the glass against the wall, his chest tightening with regret. For the first time, the man who once thought he could control everything realized he had destroyed the only thing that ever mattered. And as he sank to the floor, surrounded by broken glass and silence, Lucas whispered to the dark, "God, what have I done?" Days turned into weeks, and Lucas became a ghost of himself. The once confident billionaire who owned half the city now barely left his room. His phone rang nonstop. Business partners, investors, assistants, but he ignored them all. The man who once lived for success no longer cared if his empire crumbled, because without Anna, none of it mattered. He stopped shaving. His clothes hung loosely from his shoulders. Empty bottles filled the corners of his luxurious penthouse, and the silence was unbearable. Sometimes he would sit by the window for hours, staring at the city that once bowed to him. Everywhere he looked, he saw her. Her smile, her eyes, her kindness. He remembered how she laughed when he spilled juice on himself, how she teased him for being too serious. Now those memories felt like punishment. One night, Felix showed up at his door. When Lucas finally opened it, Felix froze. "My God! Lucas, what happened to you?" Lucas gave a hollow laugh. "I fell in love," he muttered. Felix stepped inside, looking around the mess. "You need to pull yourself together, man. You're losing everything. Contracts are collapsing. Investors are panicking." "I've already lost everything," Lucas said quietly. Felix stared at him for a long moment, then sighed. "I didn't mean for this to go that far, Lucas. It was just a stupid joke." Lucas looked up slowly, eyes red. "Then why does it hurt so much?" Felix had no answer. He left soon after, shaken by what he saw. The next day, Ricardo came too. He stood in the doorway, guilt etched across his face. "I told her the truth." But I never thought she'd walk away for good. Lucas didn't respond. Lucas, she still cares, Ricardo added. I could see it in her eyes that day. She was just broken. Lucas's voice cracked, and I broke her. For a moment, both men stood in silence. Then Ricardo said, You can't change what happened, but maybe you can fix what's left.
That night, Lucas sat alone again, but something inside him began to stir. He poured his last drink and didn't touch it. Instead, he whispered to the empty room, If love was a test, I failed. He walked to the balcony and watched the first light of dawn stretch across the skyline. For the first time in months, he felt something faint but real. Hope. He knew what he had to do. The next morning, he called his driver, cleaned up, and put on a simple shirt. No suit, no designer shoes, no mask of wealth, just Lucas. And for the first time in his life, he wasn't chasing a deal, a title, or a prize. He was chasing forgiveness. The morning air was cool as Lucas stood outside the small restaurant for the first time in months. His heart pounded like a drum inside his chest. The familiar smell of fried plantains and spices brought back a rush of memories. Her laughter, her voice, the way she used to look at him with trust in her eyes. He wasn't sure if she would ever forgive him, but he knew one thing. He couldn't live another day without trying. As he walked in, a few customers recognized him immediately. The billionaire who once turned the place into a fairy tale had returned, but this time there was no arrogance in his eyes. Only humility. Anna's aunt spotted him first and froze. Then, without a word, she walked to the kitchen. Moments later, Anna appeared. She looked different, stronger, calmer, but her eyes still carried the hurt he had caused. Lucas, she said quietly. He swallowed hard. Anna, I needed to see you. I don't know if there's anything left to say, she replied softly. Then let me say it anyway, he said, his voice trembling. I lied. I betrayed your trust, and I would give up every cent I own to take that back. But I can't. What I can do is tell you the truth. Since the day I met you, I haven't been the same. You showed me what love really is, something I'd never known before. Tears glistened in Anna's eyes, but she stayed silent. Lucas stepped closer, his tone desperate yet sincere. You made me see life beyond money, beyond pride. I lost myself trying to win a stupid bet, but in the process, I found you, and I found the man I want to be. Her lips trembled. Do you even know how much you hurt me? I do, he whispered, and I'll spend the rest of my life making it right, if you let me. Silence filled the small restaurant. Outside, the world went on as usual, but inside, time seemed to stand still. Anna finally spoke. People make mistakes, Lucas, but love doesn't erase pain. It transforms it. You broke me once. I just need to know this isn't another illusion. He shook his head quickly. No illusions, no games, just me, just truth. For a long moment, she searched his face, and for the first time she saw something she hadn't before. Real humility. Then, slowly, she stepped forward and placed her hand on his cheek. Don't make me regret this, she whispered. Lucas's eyes filled with tears. He pulled her gently into his arms, holding her like a man afraid to wake from a dream. I won't, he promised. When they finally parted, Anna smiled faintly. Now go wash those dishes. You still owe my aunt for that broken sign. He laughed, really laughed, for the first time in months. Months later, their small wedding filled that same restaurant with laughter, music, and tears. The headlines called it "The Billionaire Who Fell in Love with the Waitress." But for Lucas and Anna, it wasn't about status or wealth. It was about grace. About how love, even when born from a lie, can still find its truth when hearts choose to change. And as they danced under the string lights that night, Lucas whispered in his ear, I lost the bet, but I won my life back.